Artists have a tendency to compare themselves to other artists. It's natural, and I'm sure it's not just artists. It happens in every field that you work in, whether you're drawing fake Pokémon or you're a professional Scrabble player. As an artist who also makes YouTube videos for a living, I not only compare what I make to other illustrators, but to other YouTubers as well. Watching things like Awesome Sauce's A Video About Melee or Shiny Catherine's I Just Got My Dream Shiny After 10 Years makes me happy because I see so clearly the intent of a person who is really passionate about something. Of course, as much as I love to see content like this, I can't help but compare this work to that of my own, and I wonder, am I really passionate about anything in the same way that these creators are about what they do? If I can put some distance between myself and such unpleasant thoughts, the rational side of my brain will tell me, this is good. It's healthy to ask yourself questions like this. Of course, in the moment when all of these emotions hit me at once, I just want to curl up into a ball and shut my eyes. Looking back across everything I've made as an artist and a YouTuber over the past 6 years or so, I'm comforted by one simple fact. I'm definitely passionate about something. Maybe it's making YouTube videos, maybe it's telling stories, maybe it's drawing fake Pokémon, or maybe I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. And although admitting that I'm not a master of anything may be a bad way to start off a tutorial video, I think maybe hearing that even someone who has experienced success in their field worries about not being good enough is a valuable lesson to anyone who wants to take a crack at being an artist for a living. I might not be as passionate about drawing Fakeon as it seems other creators are about their own interests, but I do feel like I've gotten good enough at this particular craft that I can share what I know with other people to help them develop the technical, conceptual, and professional skills that they will need to take their art to the next level. Besides, being an artist means being openly vulnerable about your emotions. Maybe I'm just passionate about oversharing on the internet. We're back, everyone. Welcome to Subjectively. My name is Jack, and today we're returning to one of this channel's most beloved subject matters, drawing fake Pokemon. The Mazda Region series was arguably the single biggest reason our channel has anywhere near as many subscribers as it does right now. Almost 3 years of concept exploration and designs that inspired a whole team of devoted fans to start working on a game of their own. And they have news to share with you soon in case any of you were eager to hear more about it. Just hold out a few more weeks. I decided to end my contributions to the Mazda Region project about a year ago, though it's certainly not finished. In fact, we just launched a Gastronaut figure to celebrate Subjectively's 6th anniversary. I'll shamelessly promote this later on in the video, but if you're interested in owning a piece of Subjectively history, pre-orders are available now and they're going fast. So click the link in the description and grab one of these bad boys before they're gone. Anyway, though I may be done with the Mazda region, I do still like drawing fake Pokemon. Keeping up with our well-loved tradition of annual April Fool's videos, I came up with 3 starters for a semi-serious new collection of Fakeon designs, the Haba region. Today, we are going to continue these starters' evolutionary lines and use them as examples of my processes when it comes to designing Fakeon. Even if I don't always feel like I'm as passionate about it as I should be, drawing Fakeon always makes me feel good. It reminds me of being a kid, coming up with these ideas with my friends and sisters and getting lost in the imaginary world that so lends itself to creative exploration. That's part of what's so appealing about designing Fakeon. The established conventions of Pokemon make for a perfect structure that other artists can build off of. Every new expansion of the franchise includes 3 starter Pokemon, at least 2 legendaries, and a whole host of other consistencies that allow room for an artist's personal taste to show through. It's a lot like the month-long drawing challenges I like to do on this channel. Artists have a set of prompts that help them get their creative juices flowing, and they can expand on existing concepts in new and unique ways. Even if you're not a big fan of Pokemon, or if you haven't touched a game since Diamond and Pearl, I still recommend designing a Fakeon or two as a creative exercise. You can learn a lot, from color theory to shape language to characterization and countless other vital skills for illustrators to have. I should clarify, drawing Fakeon doesn't always mean copying the official Pokemon art style. A lot of artists limit themselves to the rendering style of artists like Ken Sugimori or James Turner, or any of the other artists who work for Gamefreak to produce the key art that we're all so familiar with. It can be fun to emulate how these artists handle line, shape, colors, and value, but it's not essential to create a compelling Fakeon. Just look at this artwork by Emilio, an artist who I recently collaborated with on a Fakeon drawing challenge. Though he didn't make his characters look consistent with the technical conventions of official Pokemon key art, no one can argue that his personal style detracts from his designs. If anything, it might make them look even more appealing than if he had forced himself to draw in the Ken Sugimori style. Pigeonholing yourself into drawing in a certain way is antithetical to an artist's development. Even the artists we associate with the official Pokemon art style don't really draw that way all the time. Look how cute James Turner's art looks when he's not working for Gamefreak. I mean, it's cute either way, but with these pieces we get a better idea of who the artist is behind the work, rather than another manufactured product designed to be uniform with other artists. Remember, even when you're drawing Pokemon, you're still making art. Art is an expression of who you are, what you love, what you fear, what you've experienced and lived through. It may sound silly, but you can let those experiences show through in your designs, and they'll be stronger for it. Now, all of that said, I will be using this video to break down my process of drawing Fakeon in the official Pokemon style. There's value in understanding technical skills and how artists use them, but remember that limiting yourself to these skills may be detrimental in the long run. We're going to break my process down into 5 succinct steps to facilitate the explanation. I don't follow all of these steps in the exact same order every time I draw a Fakeon, but for the sake of clarity, let's say that these are the 5 steps to drawing Fakeon. Step 1. Concept exploration. Step 2, rough sketching. Step 3, line work. Step 4, color blocking. And Step 5, final rendering and presentation. If you've watched any of my other videos about my general character design process, these steps may sound familiar to you. Designing a Fakeon isn't too different from designing any other character. In fact, you should think of it as the same. And if you've watched my older videos about the Maza region, you may remember me taking these steps to design such icons as Gastronaut. Did I mention that the Gastronaut figure is available for pre-orders right now, and that it's selling out fast? Did I not? I'm sure I did. Well, anyway, the link is in the description if you want to snag one of your own. Remember, 1 in every 100 Gastronauts ordered will include a shiny Gastronaut. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, right, character design in the context of designing Fakeon. The biggest differences between Pikachu and Eden happen in Step 1, concept exploration. Here, we're going to figure out what it is we want to accomplish with our character design. Seeing as we're trying to create something that could believably exist in the world of Pokemon, a lot of this step is already done for us. Pokemon designs are multifaceted. They need to be marketable, legible, and they need to cover a wide scope of design aesthetics in order to appeal to a broad audience of people from ages 5 to 50. James Turner once said that no matter what design choices you make with a Pokemon, one thing should always remain the same. Every Pokemon looks like it could be your friend. Even something as alien and imposing as Guzzlord has the capacity within its design to emote, articulate, and express itself. The elements of its design can shift ever so slightly to take it from scary to empathetic, and that's the essence of a good Pokemon design. So, with that much of the concept already predetermined, we now inject our own perspective as artists to conjure up something new. I conceived the Haba region as a little celebration of the part of the world that I call home, the northeast coast of the United States, New England. Get it? Haba. Anyway, Motifs like this can help you unify your Fakeon designs. Using a specific region of the world as an inspiration is something that people like to do a lot with their dexes, though it's by no means a necessity. And once again, adhering to these limitations too strictly could work against you. Unless you enjoy inflexible constraints that apply to all of your designs, don't feel pressured to design every single character after a real-world location. For me, taking what I know and love about New England and translating that into the Pokémon style is a fun way for me to indulge in nostalgia, comfort, and whatever shreds of culture you can say we lobster lovers have. Speaking of lobsters, my first idea for the New England region was really as shrimple as that. One of my favorite parts about living in New England is all of the wonderful marine life that calls our waters home. I don't eat shellfish personally, I find them nasty, but from an artistic and scientific perspective, I absolutely adore crustaceans. Crabs, lobsters, shrimps, I just think they're neat. This is evident if you're familiar with my other work. Sometimes your concept development can be as straightforward as, I like this thing, and you can indulge in what you like about that thing as much or as little as you like. For me, making a really self-indulgent Decapod character meant making it look cute and likable rather than what the reality may be for most people. Other concepts can be a little sillier, like the grass starter concept that I came up with. This started with New Englanders' fanatic devotion to our sports teams and the football player Tom Brady, who is known around here simply as the GOAT. I thought I could stylize a baby goat to look like the logo of the local NFL team, the Patriots, and integrate the idea of football into the typing of the Pokémon. Football field, grass type. It's not too much of a leap, right? I think the most complicated concept of these three starter designs was that of my fire starter. When I think about what I loved most and found most iconic about New England, my top 3 list ended up being the marine life, the sports obsessions, and the beautiful national and state parks. Of course, I already had my grass type design, so how could I make a fire type relate to spending time outdoors? Well, a lot of people up here enjoy nature by hunting. I'm not a fan myself, but I can't deny that it's a big part of New England culture. Because I didn't want to make a Pokémon that shot other Pokémon for sport, I had to get a little creative. Claire actually suggested a gunpowder turkey, and I took that idea further by including a Flintstone beak. Suddenly, the image of a cute little turkey chick whose sneezes could blow a hole in a tree was conjured in my mind, and I knew I was onto something. Now, when it comes to Fakeon designs, you have to consider another big part of the process: evolutions. Pokémon evolutions don't just build off of the visuals of the previous design, but also the concept. If you're planning on creating a multi-form line, think about how you can evolve the concept of your primary form in its subsequent forms. This may mean adding a secondary concept to your original one. For Shrimple, I thought I'd include a secondary concept of artistic expression, as Boston was where my artistic career started, and this was the most self-indulgent of the first 3 starters for me. Shrimple could start off as unmotivated, lazy, but creative. Its evolution would be emotionally repressed and grouchy, but the final evolution would embrace its quirks and blossom into a beautiful adult. Kid Kickoff, similarly, would start off as competitive and stubborn, like a young football player. As it evolves, though, its desire to be better gets worn down and replaced with an appreciation for the simpler things: a well-mowed field of grass and a breezy summer day. Gobshot, for having probably the most complex concept of the 3, would have a fairly simple conceptual progression, less of an emotional journey and one more of control and discipline. It would learn to harness its ability to, blow things up so that it could more responsibly enjoy its environment and keep others safe. So, in summary, step 1 is concept exploration. Isolate themes, visuals, and concepts that you want to inspire your design and figure out the best way to incorporate these elements into your design. Don't limit yourself to things like real-world geographical constraints, animal anatomy, or really any laws of nature that apply to our world. Shrimple is a crab, a shrimp, a lobster, a cat. It's a Pokémon, not one specific animal. Now we can move on to step 2. Rough sketching. When it comes to sketching, your choice of brush is very important. Almost all of the brushes I used were designed by Claire, but for sketching I actually use this brush pack. I'll link the Etsy download in the description of the video. When you're sketching, there are a few things you want to keep in mind: proportion, pose, and personality. Be gestural with your sketching, and don't be afraid to get messy. No one needs to see this stage of your process but you, so as long as you can understand what you're putting on paper, or on screen in my case, that's all that matters. That said, make sure you can understand what you're putting on screen, or paper. That scribbly, gestural style that you see people sketch in, that's not just for show. Those sweeping lines and semi-opaque spirals are capturing the movement of a form. If your character is slow-moving, irritable, and moody, maybe your sketch is a ball of overlapping lines, like a tangled mess of anxiety slowly becoming a character with recognizable features. If your character is expressive, elegant, and full of movement, ease up on your wrist. Let your brush move in a fluid motion to really convey the energy of your design. This is where step 1 becomes crucial. You can't make a good sketch without really understanding what it is you want to achieve with your visuals. However, this stage is as much of an exploration as the first one. Be sure to try out a few different ideas. You may even start on one and then decide you don't like it and create a new sketch and then determine that you actually did like your original idea best. Try other methods of sketching too, like painting a silhouette rather than sketching line work. For the final form of Kid Kickoff, I had a visual in my head of a large pair of spiraling horns shooting out vertically from the head. I wanted to design the entire weight of the character around those horns, so I created a silhouette and then sketched some rough lines over that. I also like using the symmetry tool that Procreate has to figure out the finer details of anatomy. Drawing a turnaround of your character before you finalize anything can help you get a clearer idea of the technical aspects of the design. You'll be able to more clearly see your character in 3 dimensions, which helps with shape, form, and weight. I feel like at this point I should remind everyone that even though I'm giving you these steps in chronological order, it doesn't mean that once you've completed one step, you're locked out of it for the rest of the process. You'll see me constantly bouncing around from step 1 to step 2, step 3 to step 5, and sometimes all the way from step 5 back to step 1. If you remember the Maza region, then you remember me constantly redesigning Fakeon that I grew unhappy with months or even years after I initially designed them. Now I realize that if there's something about a design I don't like, I should fix it as soon as I notice it, rather than pretend it's not bothering me as much as it does. If that means going back and undoing a lot of the work that I already did, so be it. The end result will be better for it because I'll be happier with the design. So, in summary, step 2, sketching. Use gestural lines. Make sure the sketch is legible, at least to you. Take several passes at your design, tweak, alter, and redo. Work with silhouette as much as you do line. And take your time. A good sketch is as important as the final product, so don't cheat yourself out of this step. Now, on to step 3, line work. Whew, we're blazing through these. I guess I must be at least a little bit passionate about this, otherwise I wouldn't still be talking, right? What's that Nick Cage quote?
But one step short of crazy, what do you get?
Obsessed.
Passionate.
Anyway, line work. For this, I will shamelessly plug our custom Pokémon brush pack, designed by Claire and used by me. You can use these packs for Procreate and Photoshop and buy them through our Gumroad, which is linked in the description. If you'd like to follow my technique to a T, you're going to want to use the Pokémon liner brush for this step. Your line work is going to depend on how good your underdrawing is. Hopefully, you've cleaned up your sketch enough so that it's easy for you to go over it with a clean line on another layer. Now, I draw Pokémon this way, but I don't do all of my art by drawing over a sketch on another layer. A lot of the time, I'll actually clean up my sketch enough to use it as lines and paint either over or under it. This comes back to emulating the official Pokémon style, which is something I enjoy doing with these Fakeon designs. It's a personal choice, so for this stage, consider my choices as one of the many different possible technique solutions to the problem of line work. Your real goal here is to maximize clarity. Try to avoid things like tangents, or moments where lines intersect, overlap, or touch in ways that might make your character harder for viewers to understand. This may mean going back to step 1 and changing some things about your sketches before you can finalize the line work. I tend to use Procreate's Auto Shape tool to create smooth, clean lines and curves, but to be honest, I'm trying to break that habit. I get a little too obsessed with legibility, and I think that can sometimes lessen the overall quality of my final designs. Sometimes my lines end up looking too neat, and I think that the fact that I don't see this problem in my other artwork is an indication that I'm trying a little too hard to make my Fakeon artwork look official. However you approach your lines, whether you like them thick and bold or elegant and thin, be sure that there's a consistency across your design that doesn't confuse people. If you want to use thicker lines to indicate that something is closer in the foreground, be sure you only use thicker lines in those places. You know, stuff like that. So, to summarize step 3, take your time, pick a good brush, avoid tangents, and stay consistent. Step 4 is color blocking. You may think this is going to be a quick one, but like all of the prior steps, you need to take your time here. The colors are the first thing that anyone is going to see when they look at your designs. Before they judge the personality, the anatomy, the pose, or the power, they're gonna see color. Now, Pokemon designs range from having 2 colors in their design to an entire rainbow. So when it comes to deciding how crazy you want your palette to be, it's really up to you. Personally, I err on the side of a busy palette. Usually 3 to 4 midtones, an accent color, and maybe a gray, a black, or a white in there as well. I think a good exercise for me would be to work with a more limited palette and really practice using accent colors to, well, accent important parts of the design that I want to draw my viewers' eyes to. Use things like contrast to your advantage. Place a really bright color next to a really dark color to create a moment of contrast that really catches a viewer's eye in a place that you want them to look. It's also a good idea, if you're working digitally, to switch your canvas to grayscale to get an idea of how the values of your colors interact with each other. Sometimes, a place in your design that you think has a lot of contrast may be muddier than you had expected. Switching the canvas to grayscale can help identify those moments and adjust the colors in order to fix the issue. Obviously, this is easier to do if you're working digitally than traditionally, but it's still possible to check values if you're working on paper. Just snap a pic of your work and shift it to grayscale using the filters on your phone. I would also recommend that if you're working traditionally, to scan a copy of your line work before you start experimenting with colors. This way, you can figure out your palette using copies of your line work like coloring pages. Of course, an element of Pokemon design specifically is conveying the typing of your character through these colors. Grass types tend to be green, fire types are usually red, and so on. Of course, these are not all hard and fast rules. Subvert expectations whenever you can to create something new and original. Originally, I wanted to include some blue in Tomlock's design because so few fire types have any cool colors in their palettes. The original blue I used, though, was too close to the colors I used in Maricostra's design, so I desaturated it to a cool gray that read more like volcanic stone. Starter Pokemon don't often subvert the color conventions of typing because they teach new players about the basics of type effectiveness. The fire types are always orange, yellow, or red, the water types always use blue of some shade, and the grass types are always green. Historically speaking, of course. Think about how your colors evolve with your Pokemon as well. Consider all stages of the evolutionary line as you determine your colors. Maybe the greens in my grass starter grow darker as the character goes from a young sprout to moss on a stone. Or maybe the tones become more saturated as the character learns to embrace their creative side. Sometimes the colors don't really change as the Pokemon evolves at all. Sometimes you add a new color with each new evolutionary stage, and sometimes you do all or none of these things. The really important thing is that you consider colors carefully. Don't rush this stage. Starting to see a pattern here? Finally, we move on to step 5, final rendering and presentation. This is where things get technical, which also means that your approach to this step can be very different from mine. I've already said enough times that there's no one right way to do any of this, so keep that in mind while I share with you my process for rendering texture, values, and form. I keep each color in my Pokemon's design on a separate layer. That way I can apply a clipping mask to each one and keep my brush strokes from leaking over into the other colors. Sometimes I start with highlights, other times I start with dark values, but I almost always begin by rendering the parts of the bodies that take up the most visual real estate. This way, I have a good idea of where my light source is, so I can stay consistent with my other colors. I use a couple of our Pokémon brushes for colors, depending on the texture of the Pokemon I'm currently working on, but my favorite is probably the textured old school shader, and I'll tell you why. One of the most iconic elements of the official Pokemon rendering style is this little transition between the mid-tone and the values. I used to recreate this by painting the values in one color and then splitting the difference between them and the midtones, then painting a line in that color where the value met the midtone. Now, I set my shader to a lower opacity and paint in the colors over one another, going heavier on the parts that I wanted darkest and leaving a little bit of the light color showing just around the edges. Use a similar approach when painting highlights. You can also use a slightly lighter color to further emphasize the points on the surface where the light is hitting the strongest. In some cases, you can use these little highlights to convey texture, like a bright white spot to indicate a more reflective, smooth surface, or wavy, uneven lines to simplify the texture of fur. Now, let's say we've wrapped up our rendering. We're not done yet. Presentation is crucial in any context, and Fakeon designs are no exception. The final part of my process is formatting my images on a Pokédex page. I make these myself. I used to do them in Photoshop, but recently Photoshop has been so slow and unresponsive that it's actually just easier for me to use Procreate. You can make your Pokédex pages however you like, maybe theme it around the general visuals of your region. Make a blank template so that you can use it for all of your designs in their region and edit them individually. Make sure that you save all of your files, PSDs and PNGs, just in case you have to go back and edit something. For me, presentation means giving full context for my design. I want it to look neat, but I also want people to be able to understand what it is and all of the little aspects of the design that I understand, but can't be conveyed with a single 2D illustration. With real Pokemon, we have the movies, the shows, card game art, video games, and numerous other ways to characterize each Pokemon. But because I'm only drawing one image, things like its stats, abilities, and the role it plays in its world will be conveyed through this final image. Remember, presentation is an important part of any piece of artwork you make. If you spend a long time illustrating a character, don't just upload a low-resolution image with a white background. Consider everything about your final piece, and that includes the space behind your character. Yes, that's important too. People will be able to tell the difference between an artist who's passionate about what they do and one who is just rushing through to the final product. Trust me on that. Huh, passionate. I guess I do have proof that I care about these things as much as anyone else. I mean, it doesn't always feel that way, and I guess sometimes that's just how it is. But it's nice to be able to hold on to these little reminders that there is something in this world that I really love to do. Something I love to share with people, educate them about, and see them enjoy as well. I may not be the best at what I do, but I love it all the same. And now, if you'd be so kind, please berate these designs relentlessly in the comments. Let me guess, Maricostra is too humanoid, Chillbilly has nothing to do with football, and Tomlock isn't an animal from the Chinese zodiac. Now, who am I kidding? For every mean comment I get, there are 50 nice ones that lift my spirits and boost my confidence. You guys are amazing, and I love that you let me do this for a living. And speaking of making money, let me shove this figure back in your face one more time, huh? Look at that. See that? Oh yeah. You know you want one. Limited edition. Oh, and did I tell you? Hold on. Right? Real life shiny hunting. A shiny gastronaut. There's a 1 in 100 chance that your order will not only contain the regular gastronaut, but also a shiny 1 in 100 shiny out. Real life shiny hunting that costs money. Pretty cool, right? Click on the link in the description. Grab them before they're gone. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our amazing Patreon fans. If you want to help support the channel, we have monthly rewards like prints, stickers, and more. Every dollar helps, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you all in the next video.